BookTube, we are back. Let's interview Brandon Sanderson. Before we get into the interview, if you have been following this page since the beginning, you know that Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorites, if not my favorite author of all time. And I had the pleasure or privilege of interviewing him. We got to talk about some advice for some authors. We got to talk about book talk and its impact on publishing and, just the book industry in general. We got to talk about the Cosmere, of course. And we also got to talk about his new book, Owls of Ember Dark, which is coming out soon. It was truly an incredible experience. I want to thank Octavia and the Dragonstone team, for putting it all together and getting out of Brandon Sanderson's, schedule, getting us there to do that. So, really appreciate that. And if you were there live to watch it on TikTok Live, we had an incredible moment. That was such a moment for, everybody there, for the community. And for those who weren't and just checking this video out for the first time, I hope you enjoy. Happy reading. Brandon! Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Smitty. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. What is up? Everybody in the chat, say what's up to Brandon Sanderson and Octavia in the background. I see
that. That was Octavia, yep. Social media coordinator over here and publicity coordinator. So, yeah, hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for jumping on, man. And I know I got you for a little bit here. And I just want to first start off by giving a quick bio because a lot of people know you, which we all know that, but there are a lot of newer readers who are going through the Cosmere this year that I want to just level set from here. So Brandon Sanderson, who is on this live right now, is a best-selling American fantasy and science fiction author, best known for Mistborn, Stormlight, and for completing Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time, which I still need to get to this year. He's a creator of the expansive Cosmere universe where many of his novels are interconnected. A prolific writer and writing professor at BYU, Sanderson is known for his intricate magic systems, epic world building, and groundbreaking Kickstarter success. Brandon Sanderson, welcome to the live, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know you're going to talk about this, but it's really exciting to watch what's been happening with TikTok and reading and books. It is just the coolest thing of the last 5 years in our industry by far.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you said, we're going to talk about that. But before we kind of jump into that, anytime I do these interviews with, some authors there, I stop and pause and give them their flowers or give them their praise and just say, thank you. Thank you for creating worlds that feel like home, characters who stay with you, who feel like brothers and sisters with us for a long after the page. Like everybody here can definitely, go with that. Your stories have given millions of readers like myself a place to escape, reflect, and believe in something bigger, one chapter at a time and one Sandlands at a time. So I just wanted to give you your flowers there, and everybody in the chat, if you can just thank Brandon Sanderson, obviously for his work there.
Well, thank you. To the readers here, I have to say, I work for you. You're my boss. If you weren't doing this, if you weren't reading the books, then I would have to be like an insurance actuary or something. So thank you. I think I'm much better sitting in the chair telling stories than I would be figuring out how much insurance costs and things like that. So, yeah.
That's too funny. All right, so let's kind of hop into it. So, as Sanderson's fans, and I know a lot of us here are going to laugh at this and agree with me on this one, but we all tend to joke that you will go on vacation and come back with 5 new books. You famously talk about writing every single day. So my question to you is, what keeps you motivated after so many books?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different things that kind of go hand in hand. One is I love telling stories, and I love seeing the audience reaction to the stories. I have as much in common with a stage magician as I do with, and maybe the theater crowd, as I do with, your traditional writer. I love seeing an amazing and pulling off tricks that they aren't expecting, and things like this. Stories are just so meaningful to me. They've changed my life. So being able to be in this chair, right, is partially the motivation. Like, I know a lot of people want to be here. And so being able to make good on it, is a big deal to me. I get excited by new stories. I just do this compulsively. It's like, oh, I need to do this. I'll watch a film and be like, oh, someday I need to do something like that. And I'll get hyped. I'll get excited. And then I just can't help myself. I want to tell the story, and I want to tell it really well. I want to learn what makes that kind of story tick. so I can kind of break it apart and put it back together into something interesting.
Yeah, and listen, we appreciate it. Anytime we see you go on vacation, we're like, all right, we're going to have a few more stories here. And we'll get a chance to talk about your newer one later on. And you were talking about, people who are sitting in your seat, or let's say authors, or for you, coworkers, and you are known for your epic endings, or as we call them, Sanderlanches.
Yes.
They're epic, man. They keep me up to like 2 or 3 a.m. I don't know if I should love you or like hate you the next day, but listen.
That's one of the best compliments you can give a writer, that I kept you up too late.
For sure. So what's your advice to writers who can start a story but never finish one, since you have a masterclass at finishing one? Like, what helps you cross that finish line every single time?
So here's the thing, Smitty. Getting stuck in a book is one of those things like having a headache. If you go to the doctor and you say, I have a headache, the doctor will be like, great, that rules out nothing. Like, basically everything that could be wrong with you could cause a headache. Some of them very mundane and not a big deal. Some of them a very big deal. Getting stuck in a story is very common. It happens to everyone, even to myself. And so many different things could cause it. And it's so hard to diagnose. But I do want to give you this advice. Generally, one of the things that works is if you get stuck just writing the chapter or the scene anyway. Generally, again, doesn't cover everything, but generally what's going on is part of you knows that something is wrong, and you don't want to keep making it wrong. You don't know where to go next. You're worried if you set it to writing, you will keep going down this wrong path. It's like driving your car when you know that something's wrong with it. You're like, I'm just going to make it worse, right? The thing is, that instinct is wrong with writing. Generally, if you write it anyway, you will give your subconscious something to fix and work on. If you never write what you feel is broken, then your brain won't know what to fix. Fixing a problem is a different skill than writing even is. And so it's really handy to just have anything happen. You're like, try something different. Try changing viewpoint, changing setting, just throw in a twist. If it doesn't work, your subconscious a lot of the time will be like, okay, this is what we should have done. And then you can write the right chapter the next day. Don't get precious as a writer, keeping any one chapter. Sometimes what your chapter is your brainstorming session, and you throw it away and you write a better one the next day. That works a decent amount of the time. If that's not working, then often you've got some sort of internal editor problems where you're worried about, performance anxiety. You're like, I'm just not a good writer yet. I shouldn't write till I'm a good writer. And the secret to that is, figure out what works for your psychology to get over that. And it can be different for anyone, or for every person. Sometimes I suggest writing longhand, going and taking a notebook and writing just to jog yourself out of it. Sometimes it's good habits. Go the same time every day, spend the same amount of time, and then slowly your word counts will pick up. But almost always, 9 out of 10 times, it's better to stay on the project than abandon it. Because if you keep abandoning projects, your brain will always want to abandon that project when it gets hard.
Oof. Solid advice, because we do have a lot of writers or prospective writers on here who, again, I always ask this question, and the people who are at your stage, like you said, that's great advice. Like, you can't just stop. You just got to keep on going, try new things. And for my authors out there, potential authors out there, I hope you take that advice from the man himself. Now, here's a question you brought up earlier in the intro here, and this is something that's near and dear to me. So I started my account like a year or so ago, but I've always been a reader. But my question to you is, people say book talk has made reading cool again. Do you think we're seeing a real cultural shift in how we're engaging, with books?
Yeah, I really do think we are. And it's kind of interesting. People don't know how to market books anymore. And this is kind of scary in the industry. Books have always been a niche genre. You never, turned on your television and saw an advertisement for a book. Very rarely. Generally, books would sell by having books on the bookshelf and people would browse. You counted on somebody looking in the new release section, browsing and getting captivated by a good blurb about the book, a good, someone advocating for the book on the cover or just a good cover design. And that's how I broke in 2005. A good cover, good placement on the new release shelf, and people were willing to give the book a try. These days, fewer people are in bookstores. This is sad, but it's also progress, right? The move to digital has made writing much more of a possible career for a lot of people that it couldn't be before, and allows writing to serve lots of niche genres that they couldn't before. It's an overall win for everyone, but it makes finding books harder because it's suddenly, instead of 300 books being published in a year, 30,000 books are published in a year. And people aren't in the bookstores browsing as much. And so seeing things like Book Talkers that can kind of be like how librarians used to work, right? Where you go to a librarian to be like, so, or booksellers, as booksellers used to be. I would go into the bookstore and be like, what have you read lately? And they would pitch me on a book and I would buy it and read it. People on Book Talk, and a lesser extent, some of the other platforms are doing that now. And I think it's a really good thing. It's very grassroots. It's getting a lot of people reading. It's reminding everyone, why we love books, why we love reading. And so, yeah, I've loved watching it. And seeing it happen and seeing how different trends influence how publishing works. It's really fun. I don't think publishing even knows what to do with Book Talk, even still.
Yeah. No, and hopefully they get up to speed. I mean, again, I know obviously I have a platform, but there's so many, smaller creators, medium-sized creators, like who, pour their heart and soul in some of these books that some of us have never heard of. And obviously, your books for sure. I know I always talk about your underrated Mistborn Era too, and like now a lot of people are reading those now, which is super dope. But like Book Talk itself, first off, I know it's changed, a lot of authors' lives, obviously changed my lives, people on this live too as well. So I love that your answer there in terms of, the way it's changing everything for the positive. And yeah. So speaking of that, do you read reviews or reactions online, or do you try to stay, creatively insulated?
I do. And this is because of the way my process works. I do a lot of test audience reads before. And I need to be the one who can look at all of this feedback from the test audience and know what advice I should take and what advice I shouldn't take. And this is hard, right? Because some books, you want certain reactions, right? And we talked non-spoilers, so I'm not going to talk spoilers, but there are certain books that I release that the goal is to make people uncomfortable now so that you can pay that off in a later book. And the question of, do you take the advice from the early readers? Do you not? I like to see if what the feedback I've gotten generally matches the feedback for the book when it's released. I'd like to see, is there anything that surprised? In hindsight, is there advice that I wish I had taken now that I see the general large-scale response to it? That's important to my process. At the heart of it, I'm trying to tell a specific story. And I want to tell the best version of that story, but I don't want to change that story into a different story to match an audience. But I do want to tell the best version of that story I can. And walking that line is one of the challenges of revision. So yeah, it's very difficult. And so I think the reviews after the fact are really handy for helping me to better gauge the early advice I get.
Yeah, no, listen, I think everybody has different viewpoints, and I think the most viewpoint is not to look at reviews. Because
most authors don't. Most authors don't, and I respect that. They're creating art. They'll create the art they want to. But at the same time, art that I create is for an audience. I'm trying to provoke and instill a certain reaction. I'm trying to create a certain experience. And if I don't watch, then I don't think I'll have those instincts for the new books in targeting and getting the reactions I want.
Yeah. I mean, you're listening, man. We're still rocking with it for sure. All right, the Cosmere.
Yes.
Let's get into the Cosmere, because again, I love to set the stage in terms of your background, in terms of like the industry itself. But let's get into the Cosmere and why I'm here, why we're all here. for someone, because there are a lot of people who looked at not only my videos, but videos from people from last year, the years before, kind of hyping up the Cosmere and getting them into Stormlight, getting them to Mistborn, get them to some standalones. By the way, Yumi the Nightmare Painter, fire, standalone.
Thanks.
Standalone. But for someone just diving into the Cosmere, can you explain in your own words what it is?
Yeah.
They start, and the age-old question, does order really matter?
Yeah. So order doesn't matter that much. I'll start with that one. You can start with the first book of any series. And I try to, one of my kind of guiding principles is I like a first book to really deliver on what the whole series is going to, the feel is going to be in a lot of ways. Harder in something like Stormlight that's going to be so long where I want each book to reinvent itself. Easier in something like Mistborn where it's like, here's a trilogy. The first book is kind of going to show you what I can do. Skyward is the same way. And so while each book is going to reinvent itself, I try to make those first books of a given series pretty readable regardless of what you've read. The further you go along, the more you'll notice the connections. What is the Cosmere? So when I started out, I wanted to write something that felt a little more like Dune or Star Wars, but with fantasy worlds and narratives. I wanted to bring some of this old school science fiction and mash it up with fantasy characters and plots, science fiction world building. And I wanted to have a whole group of just different planets interacting in an interesting way. And I knew that what I needed for that to work was really killer stories that stood on their own. It's not about the crossovers, but the crossovers, once you love the books, you'll start to see them. And so what I started doing is I built kind of a lore for how this all began, and I started writing books in it taking place on different planets. And over time, I allowed them to cross over in interesting ways. The characters, for one, will show up in another. It's like the MCU a little bit, but more about the worlds intersecting than individual, superheroes. Because I'm pushing toward kind of this sort of more galactic. Eventually, it'll be science fiction where you've imagined something like Star Wars, but each of those planets they visit, you've already read a book series on, and you know and you love. It's that sort of thing. It's fun. I started this 2 years before the MCU came out. In 2005 was when the first book came out, and Iron Man was 2007. And I think both of us tapped into something that people had been wanting, but we didn't have the internet to facilitate. Right now, if you get a little confused in something, you can be like, hey, remind me who this was, and the fans will be like, on the internet, oh, here it is, here's an article about them. You don't have to feel lost, and things like that. But in the old days, you didn't have that. And I think that kept us from going into these big interconnected. It's always a balance. You want each story to be awesome on its own, but you also want these crossovers to add more depth and interesting. So that's what the Cosmere is, in short. It's a little galaxy of fantasy worlds where people have found ways to get onto other planets and kind of show up and interfere with what's going on.
Yeah, and to all my Lord Hoppers out there, what is up? But yeah, so you described that perfectly, because when I first got into the Cosmere, that's immediately where it went. Like Avengers, MCU, like that's immediately where my mind went. And somebody put in the chat, and I'm going to agree with them. They said Cosmere over MCU. I agree with that.
I know MCU's done some pretty fantastic things. The nice thing that we have with the Cosmere is you have a single creator. And the MCU can be a little erratic because they'll be making one thing while someone else is working on something else, and they don't necessarily talk to each other and whatnot. And the best kind of runs in the MCU have been where they have coordinated that a little bit more. But again, the Cosmere is more about the worlds and things like that. I would say that if you want to know where to start, I have a few recommendations.
Okay, let's do it.
So the general recommended place to start is Mistborn, also called The Final Empire. Kind of does everything that I do well in one package. It's a little more action adventure. Some people might want to start with Tress of the Emerald Sea or Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which are a little more what we would call cozy fantasy these days. Small, self-contained stories about some people solving a problem that's less, Mistborn's about, it's epic fantasy, very epic. And so, sometimes people want something a little smaller scale. I know I do sometimes. The other thing is Stormlight. If you want to jump in the deep end, Stormlight is my best. But it also is the thing where my pitch usually for Stormlight is, once you trust me, read Stormlight. I don't have a good pitch for it, right? Like Mistborn, I can pitch really easily. I can be like, all right, Mistborn. Mistborn is what happens if the Dark Lord wins, right? Like Lord of the Rings. What if Frodo got to the end, Lord of the Rings, and Sauron was there? He's like, my ring. You thank you for bringing that back. That must have been a very hard journey. And then he killed him and he took over the world. Right? That's the setting of Mistborn. Dark Lord won. It's about a gang of thieves who decide to rob the Dark Lord. We're going to pull a heist on the Dark Lord himself. We're going to try to actually overthrow his empire by robbing him blind and bribing his armies away and things like that. So it's kind of just like a mashup between an epic fantasy and a heist novel. It's a very easy pitch. Stormlight, once you trust me, read Stormlight. That's basically my pitch on Stormlight.
Oh, that is so funny. That is so funny. And I'm going to get a chance to tell you this, and a lot of my audience knows this. In 2020, I picked up my friend Chris. He gave me Way of Kings, and I picked up the Way of Kings in 2020.
So straight into the deep end.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you right now, I DNF'd it in 2020. Wow. But I said, you know what? Let me give it another try. I tried Mistborn. I read Mistborn all the way through. Absolutely incredible. And then I went to Stormlight, and obviously I like Stormlight more than Mistborn now. So what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Here's the thing with Stormlight. It is a big endeavor to get into, and there's a part of your brain, at least there's part of mine that says, it's hard to justify this if I don't know the author is going to be good enough to make good on all these promises. Because a big, thick, epic fantasy like Stormlight, there's a lot of setup and a lot of building. And we've been burned before, where you get all the setup and then, sorry, your princess is in another castle. We aren't going to have our payoff yet. And until you trust me, it can be really, like, if people don't finish Stormlight, it's in the opening, the first 12 chapters, because they're like, this is a lot. I'm not sure that I'm ready for this. It doesn't feel like something for me. And also, I don't know if I trust him yet.
Yeah. No, listen, that's spot on. But I'm glad I went back to Stormlight because, again, Words of Radiance is my favorite book of all time. That book is insane. All right, so for me and a lot of my community here, we are very character-driven, readers. So my question to you is, what character challenged you the most as a writer in the Cosmere, and what made them so difficult to get right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of answers to this, because every character is a bit challenging in their own way. I'm reminded of writing... excuse me. No cough button hiding here. Octavia just handed me some water.
There we go. Octavia. Everyone give Octavia a shout out one more time.
So one of my go-to answers to questions like this is to talk a little bit about how tough it was to write a certain character in Hero of Ages who was going through depression at the time. And I won't say who it is because I don't want to give too many spoilers, but there's a character that becomes a main character through the course of the second book, and by the third book is very pivotal to the story of Hero of Ages. Writing depression accurately is really difficult because a lot of times when people are depressed, they just don't want to do anything. And they kind of refuse to protag, if that makes sense, if I can turn protag into a verb. And being able to write them authentically to people's lived experience, but also make the story function, is a real challenge. And so that character I struggled with right there for that reason. And it came down to putting that character on a downward slope, meaning I started the first draft, they were at rock bottom, and I realized motion, even downward motion, is easier to read. It's more compelling than staticity, being static, statisticity. And so having that character be slowly sinking into it, and you watch a car wreck in slow motion, and empathizing with them because you can see what's happening, that made it actually more compelling. That was one of the revisions, and one of the difficult revisions that I made for a story. Let's see. Are there other ones? Another big one that I can talk about that's very interesting is I struggled a lot with Dalinar in book one of Way of Kings, in Stormlight book.
Talk about it.
And so my initial pitch for Dalinar as a character is he is a warlord, right? He's based off of Subadai, the great Mongolian general, a little bit. Just like this fantastic general that you can put, Genghis Khan be like, you take this and I'll just trust that you can do it. He was that guy. And because he was a warlord, he did some pretty terrible things. And now he started to regret that. He's gone through a whole cycle and he's like not sure who he is anymore. And now we started to see visions that might be indications of a coming threat and something he needs to do. In the original draft, Dalinar was very, again, indecisive. He's like, am I going crazy or am I seeing visions? Why would visions come to me being the person that I am? And because he couldn't then act, he couldn't be decisive. He read much differently than I wanted this character to be, because I'm presenting this strong warlord, and in the initial drafts, he was just kind of wishy-washy. What I ended up doing is pulling all of his concerns, or most of them. You don't take all of it out, but you took a bunch of that, and I poured them into Adolin, his son. And if you read the first kind of introduction to Dalinar, you're going to see Adolin being like, I love my dad. He's this amazing guy. Dalinar, in his viewpoint, is confident. And then in his son's viewpoint, his son's like, what am I going to do? What do you do when your ailing parent that you love starts to show signs of mental decline? And that became Adolin's conflict. And Dalinar got to remain strong, where he could decide very early on, okay, I don't know what these are, but I need to trust them, because otherwise, what am I doing? And suddenly we had conflict between the son and the father. We had Dalinar able to be strong, but also, he questioned, and Adolin questioning him, and it made for both characters to be super compelling. Adolin was not a main character before that, and he became one when I made that swap, and I had the whole book finished, and I came back and revised it and added Adolin in and pulled all those parts out, did a huge restructure, and it is one of the things that really made Way of Kings work. So I'm glad that I did it. But, a lot of work in revisions.
Dude, literal goosebumps as you're explaining that. And then to see, again, no spoilers, but to see his development into Oathbringer, which Oathbringer just, oh my God. Yeah. We will go into spoilers at some point, at a later conversation, but that just was literal goosebumps right there. All right, so you said, I'm not going to say the first character, but this is a plug for everyone here. The character he's talking about in Mistborn Era 1 is also in Mistborn Era 2. I'm going to keep singing the high praise of Mistborn Era 2. You have to read Mistborn Era 2.
I'm so happy for that, because I do know, I understand why not as many people read it, right? Once you add guns into your fantasy, a lot of people are like, that's not what I want. You add a little bit of weird Western and a little bit of Sherlock Holmes detective. They were really fun to write because I was doing those genre mashups, and I think I've grown a lot as an author since the original Mistborn trilogy. But I can totally understand that if it's not people's cup of tea. There's too many fantastic books out there to read them all, but I do think they are stronger written, more strongly written than the original trilogy was.
I agree. I agree, but that's just me, and everybody just doesn't want to jump into it. But I'm telling you, you definitely have to, especially if you want to keep up with the Cosmere. But okay, this is a question that, so I asked the people in the community, if they want to ask some certain questions. This question came up a lot, and I'm gonna preface this with, you answer what you can answer, and everybody in this chat just know he can answer what he can answer.
Okay.
I'm setting the stage.
Okay.
If you had full creative control, what would your ideal adaptation of one of your books look like? TV series, film, animation, and which books?
All right. So we have to add a caveat to this, right? I can do whatever I want. Do I have as much of a budget as I want?
Yes.
Okay.
Unlimited funds.
Unlimited funds. And let's see. Unlimited funds. Yeah. Okay. So unlimited funds, I still think that I would make the original Mistborn trilogy as feature films. But then I would do special edition 4-hour-long versions like Peter Jackson did for the Tolkien movies.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Okay.
Right? So I would film a 4-hour version, and then I would make a theatrical version, and so basically you would have a giant 4-hour awesome version that would become the standard, right? Nobody watches the theatrical cuts of Lord of the Rings, but we'd still get to have that fantastic theater experience. So that's what I would want to do. Stormlight has to be a television show. It
100%.
cannot mix. And indeed, I built the plots in a way that kind of works for that, right? Kaladin is the A plot all through Stormlight 1. If you read it, you can generally see this. He's in all the parts, and Dalinar and Shallan alternate, right? Just like you have an A plot and then two B plots in a television show. A lot of people ask if I would do animated for Stormlight. If I had unlimited budget, then yes, I would consider animated for Stormlight. Right? The issue with animation right now is the audience isn't there for large budget animation in most cases. You get something like Arcane because League of Legends is willing to just drop their own money on it and not make it back. Any offers I've gotten that are even very good offers for animation will not do it justice in the budget with the budgets that they're offering. And so if I could get an unlimited budget, then any of them would work very well in that Arcane style, kind of adult-oriented animation. I mean, Arcane is proven, and even some of the sort of anime like Castlevania style stuff that they've been doing. But realistically, I would make Stormlight live action because I can get the budgets I want for live action. So someone's asking, is animation more expensive? It's not necessarily, but the problem is the audiences aren't there, right? The number of people that watch them don't justify the budgets currently. Now it's changing. More people are watching Arcane. More people are watching the cool stuff that we're seeing now. We're seeing a lot more anime coming in that is focused at targeted at older audiences, which is growing that fan base. So maybe in 5 to 10 years, maybe we'll see it. But right now, my choices would be a theatrical Mistborn with a 4-hour cut, and then a 10-hour Stormlight premium cable thing, either animated or live action, depending on where I could get the budget.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Because that's literally what I was thinking about in terms of Mistborn being a movie. This will Era 1 and Era 2. So I'm going to be greedy. I'm going to be greedy here. This will Era 1 and Era 2. But, and again, you don't have to react to this, but Stormlight on HBO would eat. Stormlight on HBO would eat. I mean,
HBO's been killing it lately, right? Some of the stuff they've been doing has been so fantastic. They've always been the gold standard. So yeah, I would enjoy making it for HBO.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know people are in the chat saying we'll crowdfund. I'm telling you, we will throw all the money into that for sure.
I always feel so. I've been very careful not to do that so far. Crowdfunding, main reason being that when I crowdfund something, I do it when I know I can control the whole process and deliver the product, right? I can't control the whole process for a film or television. If I crowdfunded it, I couldn't guarantee it would be made and made well, right? Because I've never made a film before. If I crowdfund a book, I know I can deliver a fantastic book.
Yeah.
But television show, I haven't made one, and so I don't want to be in a position where I take money for people that I don't know I can deliver on it.
Super smart. That is super smart. Holy smokes, that's super smart. All right, and then this one here. So you are known for obviously writing X amount of books per year, but you're also known for like laying out like your timeline. So if anybody goes to your website, they'll see kind of the rough timeline of your books here. So with your publishing timeline so well planned, have you already written or at least envisioned the final moments of the Cosmere, or are there some pieces still evolving?
So everything always evolves while you're working on it. It is art, right? I have artists that we'll work with that are visual artists that will turn in a pretty detailed sketch or rough for a final. And then as they do it, they will discover, I need to tweak this pose. This coloring will look better in a different way. And that artist, even when they have a really detailed sketch, they need that freedom to be able to create the piece of art. It is the same thing with me. I do have very detailed outlines. I could sit down with you right now and tell you the scenes for Stormlight 10. that are, the big and important pivotal scenes that are already foreshadowed in the first 5 books. That's all kind of hidden in there. We could talk about the end of the last era of Mistborn, which will be kind of the culmination and what's going to happen there. As I get there, things happen, right? Like, for instance, Adolin was not part of the original outlines as a main character. He was a character, but he wasn't getting viewpoints. And I changed that. And so, therefore, I had to go rebuild Stormlight 5 after writing Stormlight 1 so that Adolin would have, I'm not going to give you a character and then not give them something to do and an arc. And then I had to kind of do some big rebuilding to make Adolin have. And that could happen. I could sit down and write book 6 and then find out, I need to rebuild this because the character is king, right? You got to make the character work. You can have all sorts of plans and plots, but if the characters aren't working, they need to be able to change the plot. And those happy, I won't call them accidents because they're very deliberate, but, a lot of people, Adolin is their favorite character, and that had to be allowed to grow organically, no matter how much I plan and outline. There you are.
Yeah, so still evolving, because I've always, I see that timeline, I see Mistborn Era 3, I see all that, I'm like, do you know how this ends? And that's good. I mean, I guess it's good to hear because it's fluid. And
I'm really excited for the ending of Era 3. Last book of Era 3, it's got some great stuff. First book also, but I've been working a lot on the outline for book 3. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm super, super excited. And now we're talking about future books here. And you just announced your new book, which I don't know which vacation you wrote this on, but you just announced your new book, Owls of the Ember Dark, which is coming in 2026. Yep. It dives more into sci-fi than most of your other stories. So what kind of drew you back into like the sci-fi space, and how did your approach to world building kind of shift from like your usual fantasy roots?
So I'll tell you, one of the big challenges for me is that I know that I'm going, into this giant science fiction crossover epic in the future. And it's hard to hold myself back. And I found that I need like pressure valves now and then. If you read Stormlight, you'll notice that there's these things called interludes. These are one of those pressure valves. As you're writing a big epic world, you want to show off all the parts of the world. But a lot of the problems that come in epic fantasies is character bloat. As you have more and more characters that you need to have things happen for, then it gets harder and harder, and then you end up with things like what happened with George's book, where he ended up splitting a book with half the characters and half the characters, which just is kind of, you want to avoid that. So I build in these interludes to show off parts of the world where I had blockaded in my mind that these characters I'm not going to give as, very much time to. You get to see this weird little glimpse of the world. Maybe they'll show up in another interlude or crossover, but they're a pressure valve for my creativity. What's that? Or a novella. Or they'll show up in a novella. Right, exactly. Yeah. They can get their own time later on, but I can't let them take over the mainline story. Another pressure valve for me is occasionally letting me myself write a science fiction story. The Sunlit Man was one of the big pressure valves on that. Doing a classic, like golden age science fiction story, like Asimov would have written, or things like this, on a really interesting science fiction world, was a pressure valve. And Isles of the Ember Dark was another one. I wrote that one, so the idea, I wrote that a couple years ago, and I needed to delve into some of the cool science fiction things we got going on, that I just want to get writing. And I wanted to delve a little bit more so it's 2 main characters, and their interactions. One is one we know already. It's Sixth of the Dusk, from the planet First of the Sun. It's kind of a longer story with him, and the idea of his whole theme is the tradition versus changing technology. Okay. In his world, like, they entered the Industrial Revolution, and he's kind of old school. It's like, what do I do about this Industrial Revolution? And then aliens show up with science fiction tech, and just everything. It's like, what do you do when you're not even sure if you like steam engines, and now there's science fiction spaceships visiting your planet, and that's kind of his whole people dealing with that, mixed with the story of someone who is has her own ship, is kind of a space trader sort of thing, goes around and flies around and trades between different planets in the Cosmere, and kind of something that she gets embroiled in, that he gets embroiled in, behind, that I won't give too many spoilers on, but it's kind of their dual stories as they intersect with a big problem in the Cosmere.
Oh, I am locked into that because I know you touched in Rhythm of War some of the sci-fi aspects. I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. Obviously, Sunlit Man. And then I guess when you're thinking about it, because again, we all know you as this big fantasy author, but you've been diving into some sci-fi. Were there any specific sci-fi books, movies, or concepts that inspired Isles of Ember Dark, even indirectly?
Ooh, Isles of the Ember Dark. A lot of the First Contact stories.
Oh, okay.
Are inspirations for that. And I love the idea of exploration and the classic Star Trek idea of we're going and we're discovering something new, and new to us at least, and what that clash between future and sometimes past. So I would say classic Star Trek, particularly classic in the next gen, is a big deal, and then some of the kind of First Contact stories between two peoples and things like that were inspirations for me.
Love that. And then can you just drop and let us know once again, when does this get out? When does this get released?
Okay, so here's the thing. We did a crowdfunding campaign on it as part of the Words of Radiance Leatherbound. And we will know when this can come out when we get the books for backers.
Okay.
I just saw one of them come through, like one of the prototypes. It looks so cool. When we have the books in the hands of backers, we will then start shipping. So people can pre-order right now. We're anticipating November at the latest. It could be earlier than that. Okay. If you pre-order with us, as soon as we get them to backers, we'll move on to non-backers. But we gotta. When people crowdfund something, you take care of them, right? Those are the people that made it so that we knew how many to print and we could pay the money down for the printing and things like that. And so the idea is we'll send it to them, and we're going to get the ebook out earlier than that. I still don't know the exact dates. Yeah. Again, it's going to depend on a lot of things. When we know the print book is coming, we'll get the ebook to the backers, and then we'll see about selling the ebook and the audiobook to non-backers. But the book turned out really well. So those asking, it is one we already did. It was the Words of Radiance Leatherbound, so we already did it. It's now a year and a half old, so we've got the copies coming in. Hopefully pretty soon we'll start shipping. Exciting. I saw that announcement. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I do have some few fun questions. We have We have a few fun questions. If you weren't a writer, what would you be doing? And not insurance, clearly. Yeah. Sorry, when I said that, there's always someone in the chat. Someone's like, hey, I'm an actuary.
Oh, no.
I'm like, my mom is an accountant and she loves accounting, right? Like, it is so exciting for her to find the lost penny, to make a spreadsheet balance. I love that there are people that do that. Like, we need that. And there's lots of creativity and fun involved. I would just be a bad match for that, right? I focus so much on narrative. I lose my keys. I lose the penny. I am not a good match for being anything, though. I do always say that my superpower is that I'm a writer who is trained by an accountant. Okay. That's where my kind of scheduling prowess and things come in. I point at my mother. But anyway, if I weren't, I would hope that I would find my way to some artistic endeavor. Most likely, it would be coding. Oh, okay. Coding is the thing I've found closest to writing in my life that I've done. Where those who are programmers, it's a lot like writing a novel. And I would hope that I would find my way to something like that. I would love owning a bookstore, but this is not a good era to own a bookstore in. So I don't know if I would have found my way to that. But yeah, probably coding, maybe visual arts. I don't know that I have a lot of talent there, but I do have a lot of determination.
Yeah. And on the bookstore thing, by the way, everyone, please visit your local bookstores and shop there for sure.
Go ask the staff what they've been reading lately, so they can point you. They're really good at picking out the newer books, particularly by the unheard of authors that just came out. That's one of the things that bookstores are great for, particularly your little kind of corner bookstore. They'll be able to point you at some cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. All right, couple more.
Someone else mentions libraries. Librarians will do it too. Visit your libraries.
Yeah, I use a library mostly exclusively. What book made you want to be a writer?
It was a book called Dragon's Bane by Barbara Hamley.
Okay. Okay.
It's a book that shouldn't have worked for me, but it did, and I love it. I still recommend it quite a bit.
Super dope. Super dope. All right, now some more fun ones. Does pineapple go on pizza?
Pineapple goes on pizza for people who like pineapple on pizza. The world is a better place for pineapple pizza existing. I hate it. I do not like mixing. So you can add salty to my sweet. You can, but don't add sweet to my salty.
Yeah.
Kettle corn. Oh, kettle corn. It's so nefarious because it looks like regular popcorn. And then you go to get a handful of it and someone's dumped sugar all over it. So the world is a better place that people's tastes can be accommodated, but it's not for me.
Oh, that is so funny. That is so funny. All right, two more. Which of your characters would be the worst to go on a road trip with?
Worst to go on a road trip with? Lift. She would eat all your food. She would talk incessantly, complain about everything. And then you would get there and you would lose her. Yeah. And you'd feel responsible because she's still a teenager. You're like, I can't lose her, but then how do you find Lyft? Yeah, she would be miserable.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then last one, what's something on your bucket list that you haven't done yet?
On my bucket list, there are a bunch of countries I would like to visit that I haven't. I would like to get to South America. Okay. Still never been there. So I'd like to get to Colombia, to Brazil, to Argentina, to Chile, some of these things. I would love to get to Greece. I've never been to Greece. And going to Rome was so cool because kind of just, the ancientness of it. Same reason I would like to walk the Great Wall. I haven't ever done that. I've been to Taiwan, but I've never been to mainland China. So that's on my bucket list. Never been skydiving, and my wife really wants to go. And so there's a decent chance that I wouldn't know if it's on my bucket list, but it's definitely something to do that I haven't done. So, yeah. And then once we have space tourism to Mars, that's on my bucket list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super dope. Brandon Sanderson, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy writing schedule to hop on this live and, talk to all of us here. And I just want to say once again, thank you. Thanks to Octavia and the Dragonstone team for setting this up. I know everybody in the chat is super excited, and I do these live so we can all interact with authors, and we had one of the greatest authors on here. So Brandon Sanderson, I once again want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you for doing what you do. Like I said, you're the librarians for the modern age. So it's really a wonderful thing to have book talk and to have those of you reading books and just talking about what you love.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, thank you. And for everyone out there, as I always say, please take care of yourself. I appreciate you and happy reading.